Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, hi, I'm Joren, and I am here to help those aspiring to help others. So in this video, we are going to be talking about how the NCLEX works and how you can use it to your advantage. So before we do that, I gotta get some stuff ready, and I'll meet you over there. Hey guys, I just wanted to pop in and say that this all was originally in my notebook, but I didn't realize until I started editing just how bad the quality of it actually was. So basically, this was in my notebook, and it's a graph of how the NCLEX graphs your answers. So on this graph, you'll see that the green line, which I will point to, is the answers that this person answered right, and the red line is the questions the person answered wrong. The blue line that I'm pointing to is the passing line, or the line that the NCLEX believes is the minimum passing standard that people need to meet before they can go out into the field as a nurse. So the NCLEX wants to get you into the pattern of getting a question right and a question wrong and a question right and a question wrong and so on. The goal of this is to make sure that this is above the passing line, to make sure that they can see where your minimum competency is. So as we go into that, we need to talk about what the NCLEX is. It is a computer adaptive test, or a CAT. So basically that means that as you get questions right, the exam will get harder. And as you get exam questions wrong, it will get easier. So this is to really get you into that pattern of one right, one wrong, to make sure that they can truly tell with a 95% confidence that you are passing or failing the exam. And that takes us into one of the most common questions, which is how many questions do I get on the test? And the answer to that is it really can be any number, but 75 is the minimum and 265 is the maximum. Going off this, one of the other most common questions is, when does the test shut off? And like I said before, the test will shut off when the test is 95% confident that you have either passed or failed. So that means that when you are in the right and wrong pattern for enough time for the test to decide that you are passing or failing. This pattern can start anywhere from the 75 mark or the 265 mark, and it can happen anywhere in between. So it really wants you to pass, so that's why it's giving you these easier questions and harder questions, because it wants to see where that minimum competency for you lies. So let's move on to another common question, which are, what are the types of questions that are on the NCLEX? So there's a lot of different kinds. One of the most common that you'll see is the multiple choice question, which are everyone's favorite. Then there are a plethora of alternate format questions. So these will take the form of select all that apply, which, are very dreadful. Labeling questions, so those are normally like farm questions. They're also called fill in the blanks. There are hotspot questions where they'll show you a picture of a person's body and you have to pick out where a person will feel pain or where that affliction is. Then there are things called ordering questions, which will give you a skill and the steps in that skill, and then you have to order it in the way it should be performed. Then there are audio questions, which will basically give you things like lung sounds, and you have to identify what type of lung sound they are. So that could be like wheezing or stridor or things like that. Next, I wanted to talk about the common misconception that alternate format questions are considered harder than the typical multiple choice question. As far as the NCLEX is concerned, it doesn't rank alternate format questions as being more difficult than the multiple choice question. For example, you could get a select all that apply that says choose the animals out of the following, and the options are banana, cow, pig, raspberry, cat. So even though this is a select all that apply question, it doesn't necessarily mean that the question is a hard question. So even though you get a select all that apply, it doesn't necessarily mean that you got the previous question correct. Another common question that people ask is how much time do I have to complete the NCLEX or the exam in general? So for the RN exam or the registered nurse exam, you get 6 hours, and for the practical nurse exam or the PN exam, you get 5 hours. Another question that it goes hand in hand with this one is what if I run out of time? I want to stress that this is extremely, extremely uncommon for someone to run out of time on the NCLEX. There is plenty of time to do the 265 questions. But that being said, if you do run out of time, the test will look at the last 60 questions, and if a single one of those answers is under the passing line, you will fail the exam. So I wanted to go back up to this graph if you're visual like I am. So let's say this person, the test shuts off at 15 questions because this person ran out of time. I don't know how that happens, but maybe this person fell asleep. But for the purposes of this video, they ran out of time at question 15. So since the test looks at the last 60 questions, since this person answered questions below the passing line within that past 60 questions, this person would fail. So going off that, another question a lot of people have is what if I get all 265 questions? The answer to this one will hopefully come as a relief to a lot of you, and that is the test only looks at the very last question that you answered. So at 265, if your last answer is above the passing line, you pass the exam, which is fantastic. However, on the other side of that, if it's below that passing standard, you'll fail. But hopefully by the end of that, you'll be above that passing line. So I wanted to throw out some statistics that'll hopefully make you all feel a little bit better, because I know when I heard about the NCLEX algorithm, I got really, really nervous. So currently, the overall pass rate for first-time test takers of the NCLEX is 88%. So that means that around every 9 people out of 10 that take the NCLEX pass, which should feel really, really good about your odds. I know that statistic made me feel a lot better, but I also wanted to add in that it's really important to take into account your school's statistics for pass rates. So you can find this by basically just Googling your school's pass rate, and it should come up with like your state's list of universities, and it should list all of the schools so you can kind of see how they line up. I know that was really, really important for me because my school went through a curriculum change with the cohort before me, so being able to see how they did after the curriculum change was really, really important. So I know I just threw a lot of information at you, and I'm sure you're probably wondering what the heck do I do with all this information? So I wanted to kind of give you all some strategies that you can use to use the NCLEX algorithm to your advantage. Okay, so the first couple of tips that I have for you are mainly about like the prep stage for the NCLEX. So my first tip is going to be try to sit down and do a full 265 question test, like a practice NCLEX if you can. It will really help prepare you and see if you have the stamina to like get through a 265 question test, because if you do have to sit for a 265 question test, you're going to be able to do it if you've done it before. And you can see exactly where you need to take breaks or where you need to just kind of refocus yourself and recenter and really get into a better mindset while you're taking the test. The second tip that I have for you all is not to go with friends. So a lot of people make this mistake. They're like, oh, I'll go with friends, I'll have that support system. And while that seems really good, it can also be detrimental to you while you're taking the NCLEX, because let's say you do have to sit for a longer time and other people pass at 275, or they sit for longer than 75 and you pass at 75. You or they are really going to be focused on, well, they already left, am I doing something wrong, or I'm not as good as my friends, or they're waiting for me out in their cars, like I'm stressing to be able to have to get this test done, when you really should be focusing on the test and yourself, because this is your career. You're not doing this for your friends, and you shouldn't have to worry about if they're waiting for you or not. Like, it's okay if your friends happen to be at the testing center at the same time, but don't like seek out to like say like we're gonna take it on this day together and then we're gonna go do this after, because then you're setting a time constraint on yourself that you really don't need to be, and that can really get you out of the NCLEX mindset if you're worrying about all of these other things outside of your control. Another tip that I have that I didn't listen to when I did it was eat a good breakfast. Please eat a good breakfast. I only had like a piece of cheese, which I mentioned in my other video, which I'll link right here, which is basically about my NCLEX story. But eat a good breakfast. Like, don't skip breakfast, even if that's normally what you do, because if you're in the test and your stomach starts growling like I was, one, it's kind of a distraction to other people, but it's also a distraction to you because you're gonna be so focused on being hungry that you're not gonna be focusing on the test. You're gonna be like, ooh, when can I get out of here so I can go get something to eat? Because I know that's what I was thinking. And you really shouldn't be thinking about that when you're taking the test, because you need to be focusing on the test and making sure that you can answer those questions to the best of your ability. So make sure that you eat a good breakfast, because that'll really help you be able to focus and be prepared when you go in. So the last few tips that I have for you all are when you're in the test. So the fourth tip that I have for you all is try to use the noise canceling headphones. If that's how you take tests the best, use them. Maybe just for a few of the questions, see if you like it, because then you're really able to just stay in your mind and focus on the test and not have to worry about anything else around you. The other one that I have kind of goes back to prepping for the test, but also during it, is don't go in with the mindset that the test is going to shut off at 75 questions. It doesn't always happen. Like, sometimes it does, but if you go in thinking, yes, 100% it's shutting off at 75 because I'm the coolest, like I'm rad, all that stuff, and it doesn't, you're setting yourself up for a lot of unneeded anxiety that could potentially happen if it doesn't shut off at 75. For example, one of my teachers talked about when she was taking the NCLEX, she went in 100% confident. She's like top student, all A's all the time. She was convinced that it was gonna shut off at 75. So when 75 came along, press next, and it didn't shut off, she had a full-blown panic attack, breakdown, whatever you wanna call it, where she had to kind of leave the room and take a break because she was freaking out so badly, like crying, you know, because it happened. If you go in thinking that this is what's going to happen and you're just so convinced in your mind that that's what's gonna happen and it doesn't, it's a little nerve-wracking. So, you know, she sat back down at the computer, she answered question 76, press next, and it shut off. She just needed that one extra question to be able to get her on the track that she needed for the test, to have confidence that she was passing the test. My next tip for you all is to take the breaks. If you are going along and you hit that 2-hour mark, you don't know how many questions you have left. So take the break, because it allows you to kind of recenter yourself, refresh your mind, get into a better like mind state to be able to continue on. Get a drink, get something to eat, just kind of chill for a second so you can really go back into the test new and fresh and ready to go. One caveat with this that was kind of a deterrent for me, but thinking back, it really shouldn't have been, because it's so unlikely that people run out of time. The timer does keep running, but take a 5-minute break, just kind of get yourself out of, you know, the anxious, nervous mindset and go in new. But take the break. It's so important that if you are around for that long, you take a break, because it's not great for your state of mind if you're just sitting there at the test and worrying about it. So kind of going off that, the test has 2 breaks that are broken into them. So that is a break at 2 hours and a break at 3.5 hours. So that kind of gives you a time frame of like, if you do decide to do the full test, like when you should take breaks and see if they work for you. And the very last tip that I have for you is probably one of the most important ones that I have here, is if you feel like you're running out of time, which might I add is extremely uncommon. People don't usually run out of time. Like, it's very uncommon that somebody does. Don't give up. Because let's say you're on question 125, you have 10 minutes left. It's really easy to think, I'm just gonna start answering questions and try and see if it'll shut off. Don't do that, because if you run out of time, like I said, they look at the last 60 questions, and if a singular one question is under that passing line, you will fail. So it's so important that even though you're not getting as many questions done, you're answering every single one to the best of your ability, so you give yourself the highest probability of passing. You're really hurting yourself if you just start answering questions randomly, and you really don't want to do that. You want to give yourself the best ability to pass the test, and I want you to pass the test. I want everyone to pass the test. We need so many more nurses, and I'd love to see some of you all working with me one day, and you know, as coworkers. So those are all of my tips that I have for you all on how to use that algorithm and give yourself the best odds. If you guys have any questions on kind of what you all want to see, I am planning to have a video at some point about like my NCLEX strategies and what I used and how I studied for the NCLEX. So if you're interested in that, please leave a comment below. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye guys.